Welcome to Between Service and Science, a podcast for veterans with military exposure or deployment-related health concerns. I'm Drew Helmer, a physician and a researcher who is focused on answering some of these questions and improving the communication between scientists, clinicians, and veterans. On this episode, we have the author in the room. Dr. Laila Abdullah will answer the question, do veterans with Gulf War illness benefit from oleoylethanolamide supplementation? Like me, you may wonder, what is oleoylethanolamide? And we'll get an answer to that too. Let me introduce our guest. Dr. Laila Abdullah is a research biologist at the James A. Haley VA Hospital and a scientist level 3 and director of omics research at the Roskamp Institute. Her research focuses on understanding the biological mechanisms underlying Gulf War illness and other neurological conditions linked to military-related toxicant exposures. Dr. Abdullah's team has been investigating oleoylethanolamide, or OEA, a naturally occurring lipid molecule. They hypothesize that taking this nutritional supplement may support energy regulation and cellular pathways related to fatigue and mood in veterans with Gulf War illness. Their article, Oleoylethanolamide Supplementation Improves Mood and Reduces Fatigue in Veterans with Gulf War Illness in a 15-week randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled exploratory clinical trial, was published in Science Reports in January of 2026. Welcome, Dr. Abdullah, and congratulations on the publication. That's great news. So we have our first question for you, which is, what is oleoylethanolamide, or OEA, as we better call it? It's a tough one to pronounce.
Yes, we'll stick with OEA. It is the natural fat in your body derived from olive oil that you consume. So it's changed into OEA in your body, and it's primarily made in the gut.
And so what does it do? Why is OEA important?
Basically, it functions in the body to regulate your appetite and has been shown to reduce cholesterol and triglycerides. It basically is what's called the endocannabinoids instead of, what you're familiar with marijuana, but it actually works in the same system, but it does not function like marijuana. That's why it's called endocannabinoids. It's a naturally occurring cannabinoid-like molecule.
It's like the marijuana that your body makes for itself, but it doesn't make you hungry. It actually makes you less hungry.
Correct.
Why did you think this was important for Gulf War veterans with Gulf War illness? What did you think this might do for them?
Our goal has been at the Institute is to go from biology of how the veterans' biology is replicated in animal models and then understand what is needed to correct it. So from my earlier, what's called the preclinical work, it uses various models, including rodent models, to replicate symptoms of Gulf War illness, understand what the underlying biology is. From that work, we determined that the system is affected in those mouse models, and we also showed that the system is affected in veterans with GWI. So based on that, we devised, given what we know about OEA and its function, it might be helpful to veterans with GWI.
So you showed it in the rodents that when you expose them to similar toxicants, they got Gulf War illness. And then this lipid system, endocannabinoid lipid system that you're talking about, actually might be causing
Correct.
Gulf War illness? Okay.
When we examined their brain, the system was restored to its normal levels, which corresponded with reduced inflammation in the brain.
So, and that's the leading theory of what's going on in Gulf War illness is some brain inflammation, and you think that this OEA might work. So let's talk a little bit about the clinical trial that you reported, because you designed this very rigorous but still exploratory study. Can you tell us what were some of the critical aspects of your study?
Absolutely, yes. So it's very important that, as you mentioned, that rigor is maintained when we do these clinical trials. We created a placebo that matched OEA, and we blinded both the staff. And by blinding, it means that the staff doesn't know who's getting what, and then the participant doesn't know what they're getting. And it was a trial of 52 participants. So, although small size, but given the recruitment difficulties, that was a reasonable enough number to at least give us an idea of what's really happening in this exploratory study. So the goal, because this was exploratory, was to focus more on the biology and then see what's going to change, what physiology is being affected, as well as what that relates to in terms of fatigue, mood, and cognition. So I do want to mention this was too short of a period to assess cognition, but we collected that data anyway to better understand, how to design the next phase of the study.
So what were some of the important findings?
The data collection was aimed at, do we improve the quality of life of veterans with Gulf War illness, even over this short period using OEA? The instrument that we used was called, in short, it'll be MFI 20. It's a short survey to collect the fatigue-related parameters. It looks at physical fatigue, mental fatigue, or just generalized fatigue. So we collected those data, and then other quality of life data were also collected in terms of how they felt every day. So what we found was that veterans who received OEA were reporting, feeling less fatigue, and their mood also improved. Overall, the trial results do confirm if they received OEA, they did feel better.
That's great. And that benefit in the fatigue was well balanced with side effects, right?
Yeah, so we compared reporting of gastrointestinal symptoms, which is, a common problem among veterans with GWI. We did not see any difference between the placebo group or the OEA intervention group, and we basically found that no excess reporting of adverse event during this period.
And what does this mean then for improving the lives of Gulf War veterans with Gulf War illness? Should veterans go out and buy OEA, and can they buy OEA?
So one thing we do have to consider is that this is not regulated by FDA, so we don't know the quality of what's out there, but it is available, and veterans could try it and see if that helps, but pay close attention to the quality and where it's coming from and things like that.
So it sounds like, before a veteran with Gulf War illness starts taking OEA as a supplement, they should probably talk to their regular doctor about that.
Absolutely.
And keep an eye on symptoms, and maybe do their own little experiment of whether they think it works or not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can veterans increase their OEA by changing their diet, or do they need to take a supplement?
It's a little bit of, OEA or the precursor of it in oats and millet and those things, but there's just not enough of it, especially if there's a deficiency of it in the body. So you would probably need to get enough of it, you probably need to take a supplement.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what's actually happening when somebody takes OEA?
So it depends on how much of it becomes available to the brain and to the blood, which is how it can travel throughout the body. OEA, because it's a lipid, it's poorly absorbed into the blood. So it basically functions
It's like oil in water, right?
Exactly. So you'd have to take a lot of it to be able to reach the blood and then to the brain.
So it's like there's a different pathway for the OEA to have its effect on the brain. It doesn't go through the blood. Okay.
Yes.
What do you think a doctor or a prescriber taking care of a veteran with Gulf War illness should take away from this study?
I think that all we can say is that over that 10 to 15-week period, OEA is safe. It improved their quality of life, reduced their fatigue, so they were able to do more than they had previously been able to do. So if that is the goal, it might be worth trying. But the limitations are that we don't know the quality of the supplements that are out there. But I would mention that we actually need to do a longer study to fully understand the safety and potential long-term health impact of taking OEA.
Is there any interaction between diet and OEA supplementation?
Very good question. We did do a pilot study. We did realize that the immediate release formulation, it just dumps it all out. But with different formulation, it might have to be regulated with how much food, what type of food you eat. That actually allows it to target the gut region better.
So it's possible that you might need to take this on an empty stomach or need to take it in foods in order to get the biggest benefit from that OEA supplementation.
Correct. But that information is not yet known, and that's something that needs to be worked out.
We'd like to dedicate this episode to Gulf War veterans. It's been 35 years since they were in the Persian Gulf, and for those with Gulf War illness, that's a long time to suffer with chronic symptoms. It does seem that we're getting closer to understanding and having a treatment for Gulf War illness, so please hang in there. Thanks for listening. Let's keep searching for answers between service and science.